here's the key issue though. If you are an employee, right, of a toxic leader, which often toxic leaders can create fear, right? I'm afraid of this person.
Right.
What can you do to help alleviate, the situation?
Right.
Should you speak to them? Like, what's the best course of action as an employee?
Right. Well, I mentioned the first one was do your homework. Figure out who this person is that's coming in. Because again, before, whoever showed up just showed up. You didn't know anything about them. You couldn't get any background. Now you can. Again, talk to other people. Learn a little bit about them. Again, know your enemy. The second part is know yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You and I both know the two ends of the tails. We know the person that no matter what is done to them, no matter what is said, no matter how you treat them, they will never say a word.
Right.
They are fodder for the toxic leader.
Yeah.
Because that's the person, that becomes my whipping boy or whipping girl.
Yeah.
We have coworkers on the other end of the scale that you say the wrong thing to them, they may punch you in the nose.
Right.
Well, I don't care who you work for. If you punch somebody in the nose, generally you get fired.
Right.
But then there's the rest of us that's like right there in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to know yourself. You have to know what are your red lines. Don't holler at me. Don't scream at me. Don't curse at me. Don't talk about my mom.
Right.
Those are my four. And people kind of laugh when I say that. I'm like, well, it's true.
Right.
Don't get into my space,
Yeah.
okay? Because now I feel threatened.
Right.
And don't give me an ultimatum. And these are things that toxic leaders do on a regular basis. We all get a little upset every now and then. They may raise their voice or something like that. May say a curse word here or there, but to put up with this every day, that's what toxic leaders do. Those are my red lines. I don't put up with that. I have gotten up and walked out of meetings, and this is when I was in uniform.
Yeah.
I've gotten up and walked out of meetings. I will not tolerate this, sir, and walked out.
Right.
I'm not putting up with this. So if you don't know your red lines or have your red lines because you've led the charmed life and never had to deal with somebody like that,
Right.
then I sure hate it for you, but you sort of have to know yourself. The last thing would be options.
Mm-hmm.
How can you, if you can, how can you work with this person? How can you work around this person? Is it worth staying at that job?
Yeah.
Can you get another job? Do you have another means of employment? I hate to use the word confrontation because those don't necessarily end well for the person doing the confronting.
Right.
But like I told my son once when I was a CEO, and I said, hey, if I ever seem out of sorts to you guys when I come home from work, just let me know. So I came home one evening, my oldest son was going up to bed. He said, Dad, are you mad at me? I said, no. Why? Then why are you talking to me that way? He's 7 or 8 years old. And I was like, oh, sometimes people don't realize how they come across.
Yeah.
They really don't. And sometimes you can just kind of mention to someone, well, Burl, why are you raising your voice to me? Or why are you acting the way you're acting? Or somebody asked me once, you got a burr under your saddle? Excuse me? Do you have a burr under your saddle about something? And it made me realize that whether I did or didn't, that was the way I was coming across.
Right.
So sometimes it's just sitting down, talking to people, telling them the way they come across. If you don't think you can do that, another method is we won't talk about you. We'll talk about me. Mm-hmm. Okay? Because I can't control your behavior.
Right.
But I can control the way it makes me feel.
Right.
So, Sean, when you raised your voice to me back there in the cubicle and kind of shouted me out, I felt like this. Or when you fronted me out in the conference room in front of the entire C-level staff, it made me feel this way. And where you did this is the way I felt. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about your behavior,
right,
but I'm talking about the way it made me feel. Yeah. And so it causes the person to think a little bit more, a little bit better. You can also attempt to go to the next higher, but I read an article once that said toxic leaders kiss up and kick down.
Yeah.
Their boss doesn't know they're a toxic leader because they're pretty smart. They're pretty shifty.
Right.
They kiss up, but they kick down.
Right.
And so their boss doesn't necessarily know. And in some instances, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Right.
Their boss is just as toxic as they are. So you have to be very, very careful with doing things of that nature. Mm-hmm. I've seen it where lawsuits, class action suits, where an organization files suit against this person. Toxic leaders have a tendency to say things that are contrary to federal law. They talk about your age, they talk about your gender, they talk about your race, they talk about your family. Like I say, talk about my mom, it's a different story. We're gonna get into a fight.
Right.
But they have a tendency to do stuff like that because they have free reign.
Right.
And so sometimes employees can band together and identify there being more than one instance of this person being toxic. Because sometimes when just one person tries to stand up to the bully, maybe they get punched, maybe they don't.
Right.
But if you have a group of people doing the same thing, then it kind of calms them down. Another technique, and it may sound weird, ignore them.
Yeah.
I had a boss who would send me emails, very, very, not intimidating, but would get my dander, because that's what they're trying to do.
Right.
So I would respond back. So my right-hand man told me, well, sir, it's being said that you're bordering on insubordination. I don't care. I'm not putting up with that email.
Right.
So I mentioned it to a peer of mine. He said, ignore him.
Yeah.
What? Ignore him.
Yeah.
He was sending me emails like that. My right-hand man said, ignore him.
Yeah.
If he wants something from you, he'll come to you.
Right.
3 days of ignoring him, the email stopped. Email stopped. We went on to have just a regular relationship.
Yeah.
Just a normal person. Sometimes the toxic leader wants to see what you're made of.
Yeah.
Will you stand up for yourself?
Kind of the
Will
kid.
you? I mean, just
testing to see what
yeah,
they
just
can
testing
get
the
away
waters,
with,
testing
right?
to see what they can get
Yeah.
away with, trying to see. I mean, just kind of archaic.
Right.
You shouldn't be doing that in 2019.
Yeah.
But there are people that do that. Toxic leaders change. They can if they actually want to, or
Right.
if they don't actually know they're a toxic leader, or the consequences are high enough. So like I said, I mentioned before, some people don't know the way they come across. They're just gruff, they're just angry, they're just blah, 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 blah. Those are actually excuses.
Right.
So don't let them get away. Well, that's just the way Burl is. He's just a gruff old man. No,
Right.
no. He's gruff for a reason. So has anybody ever mentioned to Burl that, hey, you come across kind of gruff? Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that has been mentioned to me. So
Yeah.
maybe you need to take a softer tone. Maybe you need to take it down a notch. Maybe you need to kind of, whatever you're chasing, maybe you need to slow down or catch it. One of the two. I don't know which one.
Right.
But you don't really know how you come across. So just telling the person, and yeah, they do change if they want to. They try to make an adjustment. The person that they're that way, they know they're that way, can always recommend a coach.
Yeah.
Some people do need coaching. They
Right.
they need to understand how to speak to people at a different tone. What you did at the tactical level doesn't work at the operational level or the strategic level.
Yeah.
The strategic level is a lot about communications and how you come across, not just within the organization, but outside the organization, shareholders, stakeholders. What if, for example, okay, within your organization, people do what you say? People don't have to do what you say outside your organization. So what if you start losing vendors?
Right.
What if you start losing clients? What if you start losing customers? What if the board starts murmuring?
Right.
Okay, those can be clear indicators that you need to change some things.
Right.
Or, of course, you mentioned before, we see in the media people just being fired because of their toxicity. The consequence is too high. And then, the funny thing about that, we never hear from them again. We never hear from them
Right.
again in public life doing anything. They
That's
just,
interesting.
they're
I
just
never even
gone.
thought about that.
Yeah, they're just gone. And
Yeah.
it's like, we know they're still alive, likely,
Yeah.
but they're just gone. They're not in another organization because they no longer have a positive reputation. No one wants to take a chance on them. And so whatever amount of money they made or whatever they're doing, they're stuck doing that.
Yeah.
And so again, telling them, giving them the opportunity to change or having the consequences be too high, those are the only things that make, and of course you have the fourth category where people just don't change.
Right.
They just, they don't care. They don't care. They're just going to do what
Yeah.
they want to do. So of course they don't change, and we don't
Then
want to talk
it-
about them. So
Then it's up to you to make a change if it's really affecting you, because it can, lead. You were saying a couple things off camera, like it can lead to actually issues at home and in person's personal life. So at that point, if they're not going to change, you have to change. Because I take a similar approach, any type of leadership roles, right, as you, where it's like, hey, if we're doing something wrong, or you think we're doing something wrong, you need to tell me, because if we are, we need to switch it as quick as possible. Because I think you said, what's the number one excuse that a toxic leader has?
oh, I didn't know I was doing that. I didn't know you felt that
Right.
way. I didn't know things like that were going on. But you mentioned at the very beginning, Sean, the culture of the organization. As a regional manager, which is a company commander, I had the culture of open, honest communication.
Right.
So I was also the coach of the basketball team.
Yeah.
I came in for my weightlifting one afternoon back in the day when I was doing all that kind of stuff and I was in great shape, big time war fighter and all that. And I noticed a young private standing outside my door. I asked, could he speak to me? Oh, yeah, sure. Long story short, he cut me from the team. Now, I'm the coach, but he cut me from the team. And they sent the youngest soldier on the team to cut me from the team. And so the thing that got to me was when he said, sir, we know how much you value honesty in communications and that you wouldn't get upset because we as a team have made a different decision. Now, of course, oh yeah, I was upset.
Right.
I wanted to cry like a baby,
Yeah.
but you don't really want to see a captain crying like
Right.
a baby. So later on that evening, we had a game, and I showed up, and my assistant regional manager said, "You're a better person than I am." Why is that? I'm still mad that they cut you from being their coach. I said, "But that's what good leaders do.
Right.
You do what you're supposed to do, regardless." I had taken the team all the way to the playoffs, which they hadn't gone to before.
Yeah.
They were one game into the playoff. The person they chose as the coach quit. He quit. The very next game, I mean, they got absolutely slaughtered.
Yeah.
They got absolutely slaughtered.
Yeah.
And whereas he was better than me when it came to basketball skills, he didn't have the one thing that I had, commitment,
Right.
the will to win, the drive to win, wanting to work on the basics, wanting to work on the fundamentals, wanting to do the right things for the organization so that as a team, we could win.
Yeah.
And when he quit, and they saw that, I said, there was nothing I could do about that. When you
Right.
chose who you chose, I knew him.
Yeah.
I knew that he would quit because he doesn't have that kind of commitment.
Right.
So organizationally, if you instill that in your organization, it permeates the entire organization. Unfortunately, sometimes so does toxicity. People that you think were your friends and valued co-workers that you've been working with for 10, 15, 20 years, a toxic leader comes into the organization, they attempt to undermine or deride you. I don't want to say those people turn on you, however, they don't support you because of
Right.
fear of they'll be the next target.